This presentation provides an overview of the Relationship Check-in Project for Interpersonal Communication. This is a supplement to the written guidelines that are already available to you and posted on Husky CT. So to kind of give you an overview of the project and the idea behind the project, one of the things we know and that we discuss at the very beginning of the course is the fact that close relationships exist in many forms, but they are all central to our experience as human beings. Our highest highs and our lowest lows are experienced in close relationships, right? So these are the people who make you happy. They provide comfort in times of distress. They also know how to aggravate you, right? They know how to push your buttons. They know how to make you angrier than you can imagine. They sometimes can hurt you in ways that other people can't, but they typically understand you in ways that no one else does. So in short, close relationships really do provide life with meaning. But we don't often spend time reflecting on our communication in these relationships because I think it's easy to take them for granted. And there's, of course, always room for growth and exploration. And this project really aims to provide you with that opportunity that you might not otherwise take for yourself. So the goal of the project, there are kind of two primary goals of the project. One is to kind of explore and enhance one of your close relationships. And the second is to use course material to understand your experience. So we're trying to kind of bridge the gap between your lived experience and then what we're actually discussing in this course. So ideally, the project will help you enhance one of your close relationships while also providing an opportunity to think about how our course helps you to understand or interpret your own relational experiences. So the process is listed in detail, described in detail in the document, but let's go over each step really quickly. So the first thing you're going to do is choose a relationship that you have with one other person. So this should not be a group relationship check-in. So it's a one person, one other person. And ideally, this is a significant ongoing relationship in your life, but the boundaries of this project and which relationship you choose are flexible. The second thing you'll do once you've chosen your relationship is you will sit down with the other person in person, or you can use video chat if that's more convenient, or if you are kind of geographically dislocated. That didn't make sense. But if you don't currently live in the same geographic space, you're welcome to use video chat for this project. But you want to pick some times when you're both available and you have the space, the headspace really, to have a conversation, and you're going to ask them a set of questions. And we will provide you with the questions. Those are already listed in the project document. And you'll do this 3 times during the semester. And so the questions that we provided for each meeting will vary depending on kind of where we are in the course schedule. I'll talk a little bit more about those here shortly. But you'll then kind of reflect on that conversation that you have. So each of your conversations with this person and each reflection following the conversation should be unique. And the deadlines for each of those conversations are listed in the course schedule, so make sure you check that out. We're going to give you a set of questions for each meeting, and you should use them as a general guide. But if the conversation evolves organically, certainly kind of go where the conversation would take you naturally. If you're having trouble, though, maintaining the conversation, those questions are there to kind of keep things going. If reciprocal question asking doesn't occur naturally, have your partner ask you the same questions, right? So let's say you go through the list of 6 or 7 questions after meeting 1 and you let them respond. If they don't in turn say, well, what about you? What do you think about our relationship? Then have them ask you the same questions back. But we want this to be as natural as possible, so don't don't try and like anticipate what your answers might be in advance of the meeting, because that sort of puts you at an advantage and your partner at a disadvantage here. After you have the conversation, you'll write a 1 to 2 page reflection on, what you learned and just how you feel following that particular conversation. Some things to consider would be, in what ways do you think you or your partner could be a better or more effective relationship partner or communicator? Did you find the activity useful or beneficial? What concerns did you have prior to the conversation? And then what was your overall evaluation of the experience? Those are just some things you might include in your reflection, but really we want you to, this should be an individual kind of personal experience. So whatever it is that you'd like to reflect on and then write in your reflection is certainly fine. In writing your reflection, try to use relevant course content to kind of understand and explain your experience. I included a couple of notes in your project document, but I just want to also reiterate those things here because I don't want anyone to be, too nervous or anticipate feeling uncomfortable or like they are expected to share things that they don't want to. So you are not required to share your answers to the questions or your partner's answers to the questions. We don't need you to provide like quotations from the conversation or anything like that. The reflection really should mostly focus on your perceptions of the conversation and your experience in the conversation. With that being said, if you said something or your partner said something that was especially interesting or enlightening or important, significant, right? If it's something that came to light that you hadn't thought of before and you'd like to share, that's perfectly fine. So this is really sort of an individual personal experience, so we're not expecting you to disclose private information. If you do share something in your reflection, we will be the only ones reading those responses. It'll be the teaching assistant and me. We're not going to share information like in class or anything like that. So you don't have to worry about anybody else having access to the things that you write in your reflection. And then also, the questions that we provide are more as a guide to the conversation to make it easier to use course content and also to kind of guide you in particular ways to understand your experiences or to think about them in a way that maybe you wouldn't have previously. If you see a question in that list that you do not want to ask or you do not want to answer, feel free to skip it. It's not a big deal. And if you want to add your own questions as things kind of come up organically in the conversation, that's fine as well. So yes, it is an assignment, but it's really more meant to be an exploration of your relationship, particularly your side, your perception of that particular relationship. In terms of those questions, those guiding questions for each of your conversations, we created some and provided them in the relationship check-in guidelines document, which is available on Husky CT. So there are questions for each meeting, so make sure you check those out to see which ones you think you might be comfortable with, and if there are any that you're not comfortable asking. The questions are divided by meeting because we ideally want you to be able to use course material to understand your conversation, right? So once we get to kind of the third meeting, we will have covered conflict, transgressions, and those types of things. And so some of the questions are geared more toward, what are your experiences whenever you and your partner are in conflict with one another. Again, if any of those questions make you uncomfortable or you fear that they will provoke additional conflict in your relationship, then you can most certainly revise or ask your own questions. But just as an example, in that guidelines document, you'll see something like this, right? So there'll be a label that says questions to discuss with your partner for check-in number 1. And then there's a list of questions there. So for that first meeting, we have things like, what do you appreciate appreciate about me the most? What do you appreciate about our relationship? What does being a good communicator mean to you? Can you think of a time when you misunderstood me because of my behaviors, right? So on and so forth. So those are, again, just a general guide. They are located in the guidelines document on Husky CT. Some additional considerations as you begin this project. First of all, we recommend thinking about who you're going to choose as your partner and choose wisely. Sometimes when we begin to have deeper, more intimate discussions with one another, conversations can invoke past traumas, and those can affect our communication, our thoughts, our emotions, our behaviors, right? So a conversation may bring up unresolved conflict or bring up feelings that maybe you just haven't dealt with yet. If that happens during your conversation, proceed carefully. We're not telling you necessarily that you need to stop the conversation or that you should stop the conversation. If you are in the headspace to talk to your partner about those issues, that's fantastic. If you are not ready to explore those thoughts and feelings further, you can end that conversation or you can change the subject, right? So please be careful, because really and truly protecting your mental health and the mental health of your partner and your relationship are certainly more important than completing this assignment. So if something happens at any point and things get weird or uncomfortable, please just let us know, and we'll figure out how to proceed from there. With that being said, I do just want to mention that it's okay to feel, right? So it's okay if you do end up in a conversation with the person you've chosen and you feel upset and you feel angry. Those are all valid emotions, and you're allowed to experience them and you're allowed to express them. It's healthy, in fact, to do so. But we do not want this to be a problematic or a traumatic experience for anyone. So those are just some considerations, some things to think about as you begin this experience. I mentioned already before that questions are provided for each check-in, and they are kind of somewhat related to the lecture content for the preceding weeks leading up to the check-in, but you can let your conversations evolve naturally. You don't have to necessarily stick to those questions as if it were a script. Make sure to check the course schedule for those relationship check-in guidelines, and I'll obviously remind you when your reflections are due. And lastly, and most importantly, we really hope that you have fun with this project, but please do let us know if the experience becomes just too overwhelming. And feel free to be creative with the project. Again, it's more about kind of your own personal experience. So if you have questions about anything or concerns about anything, certainly let us know. Now, with that being said, just in case something does come up in your conversation and you have a really troubling experience and you're not sure what to do, this is the contact information for Student Health and Wellness, particularly the mental health services. They are located on the 4th floor of Arjona. That's the phone number. And then there's information on their website as well. So if like I said, if something comes up and you're just not feeling great, you can always talk to somebody there. And if you need me to connect you with someone, I'd be happy to do that as well. But really and truly, I expect this to be a really interesting and useful, beneficial experience for everyone. But with that being said, I'm always here to answer any questions or address any concerns if you have them.